When billionaire Nate Sinclair makes a quick stop at McDonald's, he never expects to come face to face with Samantha Carter, the girl he loved and lost 25 years ago. But as their past collides with the present, secrets unravel, and one revelation changes everything. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun shone through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nate Sinclair's penthouse apartment. At 42, Nathaniel Nate Sinclair had everything a man could want: a multi-million-dollar company, properties across the country, and a reputation as one of the most successful self-made businessmen in America. Nate adjusted his designer tie and checked his reflection in the mirror. His dark hair was starting to show touches of silver at the temples, which his image consultant assured him only added to his distinguished appearance. The fine lines around his eyes told the story of long nights building his empire from nothing. "Mr. Sinclair, your car is waiting," called his assistant Marcus from the living room. "You have the Hudson Development meeting at 2 hours. "I'll be right there," Nate replied, grabbing his briefcase. The elevator whisked him down 60 floors to where his driver held the door of a sleek black Mercedes. "Good morning, Mr. Sinclair," the driver said. "Morning, Jim. We need to make a slight detour before the meeting. I didn't have time for breakfast." "Of course, sir. Anywhere in particular?" Nate shook his head. "Just stop at whatever's convenient on the way." As they drove through the busy city streets, Nate scrolled through emails on his phone, barely looking up as the car pulled into a McDonald's parking lot. "This work, sir?" Jim asked. "Fine," Nate said, putting his phone away. "I won't be long." The fast food restaurant was busy with the lunch rush. Nate stood in line, checking his watch impatiently. When he reached the front, he didn't even look up at the cashier. "Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?" Something about the voice made Nate freeze. A memory tugged at the back of his mind. A summer night under stars, promises whispered. Between two teenagers who thought they had forever. Slowly, he raised his eyes and felt the world stop spinning. "Sam!" The name escaped his lips before he could stop it. Behind the counter stood a woman in her early 40s. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her once vibrant blue eyes now carried the weight of years. But despite the McDonald's uniform and the tired lines around her mouth, Nate would have recognized her anywhere. Samantha Carter, his childhood best friend, his first love, the girl he had promised to come back for, but never did. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by shock, then pain, then something carefully guarded. "Nate Sinclair," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She straightened her posture. "It's Samantha now. What can I get for you?" Nate stood there, unable to form words. The line behind him grew restless. "Sir?" she prompted, professional mask firmly in place. "Your order?" "Just a coffee," he managed to say. As she rang up his order, he noticed her hands trembling slightly. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "That'll be $2.49, she said, not meeting his eyes. Nate pulled out his wallet and handed her a 20. "Keep the change." "We don't accept tips," she said stiffly, counting out his change. Their fingers brushed as she handed him the money, and for a moment, 25 years melted away. They were just Nate and Sam again, two kids from Riverdale, with big dreams. "Sam, your coffee will be ready at the end of the counter," she cut him off, already looking past him to the next customer. Nate stepped aside, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. How had they ended up here? Him in his $3,000 suit and Sam working the register at McDonald's. As he waited for his coffee, memories flooded back. The small town where they'd grown up, the old oak tree where they carved their initials, their plans to leave Riverdale behind and conquer the world together. What had happened to her dreams of becoming an artist? The scholarship she'd been working. Tired. When his coffee arrived, Nate made a decision. He walked back to the counter, ignoring the annoyed looks from customers in line. "Excuse me," he said, interrupting Sam mid-order. "I need to speak with you." Her manager, a heavy-set woman with a name tag reading Betty, frowned at him. "Sir, you'll need to wait in line if you need something else." "It's not about food," Nate said, his eyes fixed on Sam. "It's personal." Sam's face flushed. "I'm working, Nate. I can't just—" "How much do you make in a year?" he asked suddenly. The question hung in the air. The customers nearby fell silent, sensing drama unfolding. What? Sam looked confused and embarrassed. How much? 30,000? 40? Nate pulled out his checkbook, scribbled something down, and slid it across the counter. That should cover it. Gasps filled the restaurant as people caught sight of the amount, $50,000. The other workers stared. Customers whispered and pulled out phones to record what was happening, but Sam didn't touch the check. Her eyes, now blazing with a fire Nate remembered well, locked onto his. "I don't need your money, Nathaniel," she said quietly but firmly. "That's never what I wanted." The words hit him like a physical blow. Of course, Sam had never cared about money. It was one of the things he had loved about her. "I just want to talk," he said, softer now. "Please, Sam, 5 minutes." Betty stepped forward. "Is there a problem here?" Sam looked at her manager, then back at Nate. For a second, he thought she would refuse. "Can I take my break now?" she asked Betty. "Just 15 minutes. Betty looked between them, then nodded. "Go ahead, but don't be late getting back." Sam removed her cap and came out from behind the counter. 5 minutes, she said to Nate, leading him to a corner table away from curious eyes. They sat across from each other, two strangers who once knew each other's souls. "You look good, Sam," Nate said, meaning it despite the tired lines on her face. "And you look exactly like I imagined you would," she replied. "Successful, confident?" She paused. "Rich?" There was no admiration in her voice, just statement of fact. "So I saw you on the cover of Business Weekly last year," she continued. "Sinclair Innovations, the self-made tech genius who revolutionized home security systems." "You saw that?" he asked, surprised she'd kept track of him. "Hard to miss when your face is at every newsstand." She fidgeted with her paper napkin. "Congratulations, you got everything you wanted." The unspoken accusation hung between them. "Everything except me." "Not everything," Nate said quietly. "Sam, what happened to you?" "The art scholarship, Paris?" Something flickered across her face. Old pain, old dreams. "Life happened, Nate. Not all of us get to follow our perfect plans." "But you were so talented. You could have—" "Don't," she cut him off sharply. "Don't sit there in your expensive suit and tell me what I could have done. You lost that right a long time ago." Nate fell silent, properly chastised. "You're right, I'm sorry," Sam sighed, the anger draining from her. "Why are you here, Nate? What do you want from me?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I didn't expect to see you, but now that I have—" He leaned forward. "Tell me what happened, Sam. Please." She hesitated, then spoke carefully. "My dad got sick the year after you left. Cancer. Mom couldn't handle the medical bills alone, so I deferred the scholarship to help out. By the time he passed away, the scholarship was gone and Mom was drowning in debt." She shrugged. "I got married young to Rick Davis. You remember him? It didn't work out. We have a daughter, Lily. She's in college now." "You have a daughter." Nate tried to imagine Sam as a mother. A genuine smile crossed her face for the first time. "She's studying art at State. Got her talent from me, her determination from—" She trailed off, then finished. "From somewhere." "From you," Nate thought. She might have said. "Sam, my break's almost over," she interrupted, standing up. "It was something seeing you, Nate." "Wait," he said quickly. "Can we meet again? Properly? Dinner, maybe?" Sam gave him a long look. "Why? We're not part of each other's lives anymore. We haven't been for 25 years. "Because I never stopped thinking about you," Nate said, the truth spilling out before he could stop it. "Because I made a mistake leaving the way I did. Because I want to know who you are now." She shook her head. "People like you and me don't belong in each other's worlds anymore. Give me one chance," he pressed, "one dinner. If you still feel the same way afterward, I'll never bother you again." Sam hesitated, conflicting emotions crossing her face. "Mom, is everything okay?" They both turned to see a young woman approaching their table. She was tall and slender, with Sam's blonde hair and striking blue eyes that looked oddly familiar to Nate. "Lily," Sam said, surprise in her voice, "what are you doing here?" "I came to surprise you for lunch," the girl, Lily, said, eyeing Nate suspiciously. Betty said you were on break with someone. This is Mr. Sinclair, Sam said quickly. An old friend from high school. Nate, this is my daughter, Lily. Nate stood and extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Lily. As Lily shook his hand, she studied his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Sinclair? Like Sinclair Innovations? That's right, he said. Lily looked between him and her mother, curiosity evident. How do you two know each other? We grew up together in Riverdale, Sam explained, checking her watch. But I need to get back to work. We can talk later, honey. Actually, Lily said, I came to tell you I got that internship I applied for, the one at the art gallery downtown. Sam's face lit up. Oh, Lily, that's wonderful. She hugged her daughter tightly. I'm so proud of you. They even pay a small stipend, Lily continued excitedly. It's not much, but it might help with next semester's books. Every little bit helps, Sam agreed, genuine joy mixing with what looked like worry to Nate's eyes. An idea formed in Nate's mind. What kind of art are you interested in, Lily? Mixed media, mostly, she answered. But I love all forms. The gallery specializes in emerging artists. I happen to know several gallery owners, Nate said, and I'm something of a collector myself. Sam's expression darkened. Lily, could you give us a minute? When Lily stepped away, Sam turned to Nate. Don't try to buy your way into our lives. I wasn't. Yes, you were, she said firmly. I don't want your charity, and neither does my daughter. It's not charity to help someone talented, Nate argued. And if she's anything like you, she's incredibly talented. Sam's face softened slightly. She is, but this is her journey to make, not yours to arrange. Nate nodded, accepting the boundary. The dinner offer still stands. Just to talk, Sam, for old time's sake. Sam glanced at her daughter, who was pretending not to watch them from a few tables away. Fine, one dinner. Relief washed over him. Thank you. Tomorrow night? I can pick you up at... I'll meet you, she interrupted. Le Bernardin at 8 Ace. Nate raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty exclusive restaurant. A hint of the old Sam sparkled in her eyes. If we're doing this, we're doing it somewhere where you can't throw your money around to impress me. I know you have a standing reservation there. He couldn't help but smile. She had done her homework. Le Bernardin at 800 is. As Sam walked away to rejoin her daughter and return to work, Nate felt something he hadn't experienced in years: nervousness. For a man who regularly closed $100 million deals without breaking a sweat, the prospect of dinner with Samantha Carter had his heart racing like a teenager's. His phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Meeting in 30 minutes. Where are you? Nate took one last look at Sam, now putting her cap back on behind the counter. She caught his eye briefly before turning away. As he walked out of the McDonald's, Nate knew that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. The past he'd left behind had suddenly caught up with him, and now he had to face the consequences of choices made 25 years ago. Back in his car, Jim looked at him through the rearview mirror. Everything all right, Mr. Sinclair? You were in there? Quite a while. I'm not sure, Nate answered honestly, but I think I just found something I lost a very long time ago. As they drove toward the meeting, Nate's mind wasn't on business projections or profit margins. It was on a summer night under the stars, promises made, and a young man who had chosen ambition over love. And now, against all odds, he had a second chance. But as Nate would soon discover, second chances often come with complications no one could have predicted, and the biggest one was waiting for him at Le Bernardin tomorrow night. Samantha Carter's small apartment was nothing like the luxury homes she'd seen in magazines featuring Nathaniel Sinclair. The two-bedroom space in Queens was clean and comfortable, but showed signs of a life lived paycheck to paycheck. As she stood in front of her closet that evening, Lily lounged on the bed, watching her mother with curious eyes. So you're really going to dinner with him? Lily asked, scrolling through her phone. The Nathaniel Sinclair? Sam pulled out a simple black dress, the only nice outfit she owned. It's just dinner, Lily. One night to catch up with an old friend. An old friend who happens to be worth billions, Lily said. Mom, I looked him up. His company is valued at over $3 billion. He's on the Forbes list. Money doesn't make the man, Sam replied, holding the dress against herself and frowning at her reflection. I knew him when he didn't have a penny to his name. Lily sat up, suddenly interested. What was he like back then? Sam's expression softened, memories flooding back. He was passionate, determined, always dreaming up new inventions, even as a kid. He built me a music box once, carved the whole thing by hand. That's actually kind of sweet, Lily admitted. How come you never mentioned him before? Sam's smile faded. It was a long time ago. But you were close? We were. Sam hesitated, searching for the right word. Everything. Best friends since we were 5, first loves. We had our lives all planned out. He was going to MIT, I was going to art school in Paris, and we were going to take the world by storm. What happened? Sam turned away, hanging the dress on the bathroom door. Life happened. He left for college. I stayed to take care of Grandpa. End of story. Lily wasn't convinced. Doesn't sound like the end of the story to me, not the way you two were looking at each other at McDonald's. You have quite an imagination, Sam said, trying to sound casual. Now I need to get ready. Don't wait up, I'll probably be home late. After a quick shower, Sam stood in front of the mirror, applying makeup she rarely used. At 42, she was still attractive, but years of hard work and stress had taken their toll. Laugh lines framed her eyes, and her hands showed the roughness of someone who hadn't had the luxury of expensive creams. As she fastened her mother's pearl earrings, her only fine jewelry, her phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Looking forward to tonight. Sam stared at the message, feeling a flutter of nerves she hadn't experienced in decades. She typed back a simple, "See you soon," before she could overthink it. At 7:30, she kissed Lily goodbye and headed out, taking the subway rather than spending money on a taxi. As the train rattled toward Manhattan, Sam questioned her decision to meet Nate at such an upscale restaurant. Maybe she should have suggested somewhere more casual, but there was a part of her, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, that wanted to step into his world for just one night. To see what her life might have been if things had gone differently. By the time she arrived at Le Bernardin, it was 5 minutes to 8. She smoothed her dress, took a deep breath, and walked through the doors with her head held high. The maitre d' looked at her with barely concealed judgment. "Do you have a reservation, madam?" "She's with me, Anthony," came Nate's voice from behind her. Sam turned to see him in a perfectly tailored dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He looked even more handsome than he had at the restaurant, and the confidence he exuded now was a far cry from the nervous boy she'd once known. "Mr. Sinclair, of course." Anthony's demeanor changed instantly. "Your usual table is ready, sir." Nate offered Sam his arm, which she reluctantly took. As they were led through the restaurant, heads turned. Sam felt underdressed despite her best efforts. "You look beautiful," Nate said softly, seeming to read her mind. "You always were a good liar," she replied with a small smile. Their table was in a quiet corner with a stunning view of the city lights. A bottle of champagne was already chilling in an ice bucket. "Presumptuous," Sam commented as they sat down. Nate shrugged. "Some things never change. You still hate champagne?" The fact that he remembered surprised her. "Actually, I do." He gestured to the waiter. "Could we get a glass of the Cabernet Sauvignon for the lady? And I'll have sparkling water tonight." "You're not drinking?" Sam asked after the waiter left. "I stopped about 5 years ago," Nate said. "Made too many bad decisions under the influence." "That doesn't sound like the Nate I knew. You could drink everyone under the table at Mike Peterson's parties." "I'm not the Nate you knew," he admitted. "Not entirely. 25 years changes a person." Sam nodded, unfolding her napkin. "So shall we just get this out of the way, the whole catching up part? You clearly did well for yourself." "On paper, yes," Nate said. "Sinclair Innovations started in my dorm room at MIT. Security systems at first, then expanded into everything from smart home technology to medical devices. Went public 10 years ago. The rest is history." "Ever married?" Sam asked, trying to sound casual. "Once, briefly. To my marketing director, Vanessa." A shadow crossed his face. "It lasted all of 14 months, no kids. You met Rick in high school. Football player, not very bright, but charming when he wanted to be. We got married right after Dad died. Divorced when Lily was 7. That must have been hard, Nate said. Single motherhood always is, Sam replied, taking a sip of her wine when it arrived. But we managed. Lily's the best thing that ever happened to me. Nate studied her face. She seems like a remarkable young woman. She has your eyes. And my stubbornness, Sam added with a smile. How old is she? Sam hesitated before answering. 21. Nate did the math in his head. So you had her shortly. After you left, Sam finished for him. Yes. An awkward silence fell between them as they ordered their meals. There were so many unspoken questions, so many years of silence to break through. Why didn't you ever call, Nate? Sam finally asked, the question that had haunted her for decades. Not even once? Nate looked down at his hands. I tried. The first Christmas break, I drove all the way to your house, but your mom said you were out with Rick, that you'd moved on. I saw you two together at the diner the next day, and you looked happy. Mom told me you never came by, Sam said, shocked. I waited for months for a call, a letter, anything. She never told you. Nate looked genuinely surprised. Sam, I wrote to you every week that first semester. When you never answered, I thought you were the one who had moved on. Sam shook her head in disbelief. I never got any letters, not one. Your mother, Nate said slowly. She never liked me. Thought I was distracting you from your future. She wouldn't have... Sam stopped, reconsidering. Her mother had always pushed her toward Rick, saying he was stable, reliable, from a good family. Everything Nate wasn't, in her eyes. Maybe she would have. The realization of what might have been stolen from them hung in the air. All those years, both thinking the other had forgotten. What about the scholarship? Nate asked. You were so excited about Paris. Sam's face clouded. Dad got sick, lung cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. I deferred to help take care of him, but when he died, the medical bills were overwhelming. Mom nearly lost the house. The scholarship committee gave my spot to someone else. God, Sam, I'm so sorry, Nate said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. If I had known, you couldn't have known, she said, pulling her hand away gently. You were building your future, and I made my choices. The waiter arrived with their entrees, temporarily halting the conversation. As they ate, Nate steered the discussion to lighter topics. Memories of their hometown, old friends they'd both lost touch with. Remember Mrs. Winters, the librarian who always saved new art books for you? Nate asked. Sam laughed. She was the one who told me about the scholarship in the first place. She believed in me more than anyone. Not more than I did, Nate said quietly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the years between them seemed to vanish. What happened to your art, Sam? Nate asked. Do you still paint? She shook her head. There wasn't time. Between taking care of Dad, then working to support Mom, then Lily. There were always more important things. But it was your passion. Passions. Don't pay the bills, Nate. We can't all follow our dreams. The bitterness in her voice made Nate flinch. It's not too late, you know. For what? To become a famous artist at 42? She laughed without humor. I haven't picked up a paintbrush in years. But you could, Nate insisted, if you wanted to. Sam was saved from responding by the arrival of dessert, a chocolate souffle that the chef had prepared specially for Nate's table. The perks of being Nathaniel Sinclair, Sam commented, taking a small bite. Everyone wanting to please you. It has its advantages, he admitted, and its disadvantages. You never know if people like you for yourself or for what you can do for them. Poor little rich boy, Sam teased, but there was understanding in her eyes. As they finished dessert, Nate looked at her seriously. I have a proposition for you, Sam. She raised an eyebrow. I'm not accepting your money, if that's where this is going. It's not about money. It's about time. He leaned forward. I'm opening a new headquarters for my company's charitable foundation next month. It will focus on supporting arts education in underprivileged communities. I need someone to run it, someone who understands both art and what it means to struggle. Someone I can trust. Sam stared at him. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity to use your knowledge of art to help kids like we once were. Kids with passion but no resources. I don't have any experience running a foundation. I've been working at McDonald's for the past 5 years, Nate. Before that, she sighed, retail, administrative work, whatever would pay the bills. But you have the eye, the understanding. The rest you can learn. He paused. Think about it, Sam. A chance to be surrounded by art again, to make a difference. Why me? She asked suspiciously. There must be hundreds of qualified people who jump at this job. Because there's no one I trust more to understand the mission. He met her eyes. And because I owe you, Sam, for everything you lost when I left. I don't want your guilt, she said firmly. It's not guilt. It's recognition of what you're worth, of what you've always been worth. Sam didn't know what to say. The offer was tempting, more than tempting. A job that combined her love of art with a decent salary, a chance to start over. I need time to think about it, she finally said. Take all the time you need, Nate replied. The position is yours if you want it. As the evening wound down, Nate insisted on driving Sam home. His driver, Jim, waited patiently as Nate walked Sam to her building's entrance. Thank you for tonight, Sam said, feeling strangely shy. It was not what I expected. What did you expect? Nate asked. I thought you'd be different, more. I don't know, full of yourself, Nate laughed. I probably was for a long time. Success can go to your head if you let it. What changed? His expression grew serious. About 5 years ago, I had a heart attack. Minor, but it was a wake-up call. Made me realize I'd built this empire but had no one to share it with. No real purpose beyond making more money. Hence the foundation? Among other things. I've been trying to figure out what really matters. He stepped closer. Seeing you again, it brought back a lot of memories, good ones. Sam felt her heart quicken. Nate, Mr. Sinclair? Jim called from the car. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have that video conference with Tokyo in 30 minutes. Nate sighed. The joys of international business, I have to go. He took Sam's hand and squeezed it gently. Think about the offer, please. I will, she promised. As Sam watched the expensive car pull away, she felt more confused than ever. The anger she'd nursed for years had begun to crack, replaced by questions about what might have been and what still could be. Upstairs, she found Lily waiting up for her, despite her instructions. So, Lily demanded eagerly. How was it? Complicated, Sam answered truthfully. Did he sweep you off your feet, take you to Paris on his private jet? Lily teased. Sam laughed, kicking off her shoes. Hardly, but he did offer me a job. A job? Lily sat up straight. Doing what? Running his new charitable foundation for arts education. Lily's eyes widened. Mom, that's perfect for you. You have to take it. I don't know, Lily, it's complicated. What's complicated? It's a great opportunity. Sam sighed, sitting on the edge of Lily's bed. There's history between Nate and me, a lot of it. Lily studied her mother's face. You still have feelings for him, don't you? It's not that simple. It could be, Lily insisted. Mom, you've spent my entire life putting everyone else first. Grandpa, Grandma, me, even Dad when he bothers to show up. Maybe it's time you did something for yourself. Sam kissed her daughter's forehead. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher, Lily replied with a smile. Later that night, as Sam prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with another text from Nate. No pressure, but the foundation office has a studio space that's going to waste. Just saying. Despite herself, Sam smiled. The thought of painting again, of being surrounded by art. It was tempting, more than tempting, but accepting Nate's offer meant letting him back into her life. It meant reopening old wounds and possibly creating new ones. It meant taking a risk she wasn't sure she was ready for. As she drifted off to sleep, Sam's dreams were filled with memories. A young Nate showing her his latest invention, the two of them planning their futures under the stars, the day he left for MIT with promises to return. And for the first time in years, she dreamed of painting again. The next morning, Sam was awakened by a knock at her door. Groggily, she pulled on a robe and went to answer it, expecting Mrs. Petrovich from next door asking to borrow sugar again. Instead, She found a courier holding a large, flat package. "Delivery for Samantha Carter," he said, handing her an electronic pad to sign. Confused, Sam signed and took the package inside. As she unwrapped it, her breath caught in her throat. It was an easel, a professional-grade wooden easel, folded flat for delivery. Attached was a simple note in handwriting she recognized immediately, despite the decades that had passed, "For when you're ready to start again." And Sam ran her fingers over the smooth wood, tears filling her eyes. It was exactly like the one she'd pointed out in an art supply catalogue all those years ago, the one she'd said she would buy first thing when she got to Paris. He had remembered. After all this time, he had remembered. What Sam didn't know was that across town, Nate was sitting in his office, staring at an old photograph he'd kept hidden in his desk for 25 years. A picture of him and Sam at their high school graduation, arms around each other, the world at their feet. And neither of them knew that the secrets they both kept were about to collide in a way that would change everything. Because while Sam was contemplating Nate's job offer, someone else had recognized him at the McDonald's the day before. Someone who had been watching Sam for years, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy her. Rick Davis sat in his car outside Sam's apartment building, watching the courier deliver the package. His handsome face, now weathered by years of hard living, twisted into a sneer. "Well, well, Sammy," he muttered, pulling out his phone. "Looks like your rich boyfriend is back. Time to cash in, I think." He dialed a number. "Hey, it's me. You know that information you've been looking for about Nathaniel Sinclair? I might have something better, much better." As he drove away, Rick glanced back at Sam's building. He'd always known her secret would be worth something someday. And now, it seemed, that day had finally come. The Sinclair Foundation's new building stood in stark contrast to the surrounding neighborhood. The former warehouse had been transformed into a gleaming beacon of hope in one of the city's most underprivileged areas. Large windows allowed natural light to flood the space, and a colorful mural painted by local artists covered one entire exterior wall. Samantha stood outside, clutching her portfolio and resume, even though Nate had insisted they weren't necessary. After a week of deliberation, she had decided to at least tour the facility before making her decision about the job. "You must be Ms. Carter," said a young woman who emerged from the building. "I'm Zoe, Mr. Sinclair's assistant. He asked me to show you around while he finishes up a meeting." Sam smiled nervously. "Thank you, this is quite a building." "Wait until you see inside," Zoe replied, leading the way. "Mr. Sinclair oversaw every detail personally. He's been incredibly invested in this project, more than any other in recent years." The interior was even more impressive than Sam had imagined. The first floor housed a gallery space where student artwork was already on display. The second floor contained classrooms equipped with everything from pottery wheels to digital design stations. And the third floor, "This is where the administrative offices will be," Zoe explained, showing Sam a spacious corner office with large windows. "This would be yours as the foundation director." Sam tried to keep her expression neutral, but she couldn't help being overwhelmed. The office was bigger than her entire apartment. "And this," Zoe continued, opening a door at the end of the hallway, "is the special feature Mr. Sinclair insisted on including." Sam stepped into a perfect artist studio. Easels of various sizes stood ready for use. Supply cabinets lined one wall, and skylights provided ideal lighting. It was everything she had ever dreamed of having. "He said it was for the Artist-in-Residence program," Zoe explained, "though he mentioned you might want to use it occasionally." Sam ran her fingers over a brush set that probably cost more than a week's salary at McDonald's. "It's incredible. I thought you might like it," came Nate's voice from the doorway. Sam turned to see him leaning against the doorframe, looking more casual than at dinner in jeans and a button-down shirt. "Zoe, could you give us a few minutes?" he asked. After his assistant left, Nate joined Sam in the center of the studio. "So, what do you think?" "It's overwhelming," Sam admitted. "All of this, it's like a dream." "It can be your reality," Nate said. "If you want it." Sam's eyes narrowed slightly. "What's the catch, Nate? People don't just give away jobs like this to old flames they haven't seen in decades." "No catch," he insisted. "You're qualified. You understand art. You understand the kids we're trying to help, and I trust you. That's another thing, Sam said. How can you still trust me? You don't know who I am anymore. Nate stepped closer. I'm a pretty good judge of character these days. Comes with the territory. And everything I've seen tells me you're still the Sam I knew. Kind, passionate, straightforward. Their eyes met, and Sam felt that familiar flutter in her chest. After a moment, she looked away. I'll need to give McDonald's 2 weeks' notice, she said quietly. Nate's face broke into a grin. So you'll take it? On a trial basis, Sam clarified. 3 months. Then we both reevaluate. Deal, Nate said, extending his hand. When they shook, the contact sent a jolt through Sam that she wasn't prepared for. Judging by the look on Nate's face, he felt it too. There's one more thing, Nate said, clearing his throat. The Foundation's launch gala is next Friday. As director, you should be there. A gala? Sam's excitement dimmed. I don't exactly have anything to wear to a fancy party, Nate. That's why I took the liberty of arranging a personal shopper for you this afternoon, he replied. Consider it part of your signing bonus. Before Sam could protest, he added, the Foundation needs to make a good impression on potential donors. It's business, not charity. Sam hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but nothing too extravagant. Of course not, Nate agreed, though his eyes twinkled in a way that made Sam suspicious. As they left the studio, Nate checked his watch. I have a meeting I can't miss, but Zoe will handle all the paperwork, and my driver can take you to meet the stylist. I can take the subway, Sam insisted. Humor me, Nate said. I'd feel better knowing you got there safely. Sam knew it wasn't worth arguing. As they walked back to the lobby, Nate kept a respectful distance, but she could feel his eyes on her. One question before you go, he said as they reached the doors. Why did you decide to accept? Sam considered her answer carefully. Because Lily was right. I've spent too many years putting others first. Maybe it's time to think about what I want for once. Nate nodded, looking pleased. And what do you want, Sam? To see what I can become, she answered honestly. To find the parts of myself I left behind. Well, I look forward to watching that journey, Nate said softly. Welcome to the Sinclair Foundation, Ms. Carter. As Nate's driver took her across town to meet the stylist, Sam texted Lily the news. The response was immediate. A string of excited emojis followed by "I knew it." Sam smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Her life was about to change dramatically. She just hoped she was making the right decision. The personal shopper turned out to be Elise Fontaine, one of the city's most sought-after stylists to the elite. The boutique she took Sam to had no price tags in sight, a sure sign everything was astronomically expensive. Mr. Sinclair explained, "You need a complete work wardrobe, plus something special for the gala," Elise said, assessing Sam with a professional eye. "We have much to do." The next 3 hours were a whirlwind of fabrics, colors, and styles Sam had only seen in magazines. Despite her protests, Elise insisted on selecting everything from casual office wear to formal attire. "For the gala, you need something unforgettable," Elise declared, disappearing into the back of the boutique. She returned with a midnight blue gown that took Sam's breath away. Simple but elegant, with a subtle shimmer that caught the light as it moved. "This is the one," Elise said confidently. When Sam emerged from the dressing room, even the boutique staff stopped to stare. "Perfect," Elise murmured. "You'll be the belle of the ball." Looking at her reflection, Sam hardly recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked confident, sophisticated, the woman she might have become if life had gone differently. "How much is all this going to cost?" Sam asked nervously. Elise waved her hand dismissively. "Mr. Sinclair said cost is no object." "Of course he did," Sam muttered. By the time Sam arrived home, laden with bags and boxes she hadn't been allowed to see the receipts for, Lily was waiting impatiently. "Show me everything," her daughter demanded excitedly. As they unpacked the clothes, Lily's eyes grew wider. "Mom, these are designer pieces. This jacket alone must cost thousands." "I know," Sam groaned. "It's too much. I should call Nate and tell him I can't accept all this." "Don't you dare," Lily exclaimed. "You deserve nice things for once." She held up the blue gown. "And you absolutely have to wear this to the gala. You'll look stunning." Sam smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. When did you become so grown up? Around the same time you started letting yourself live a little, Lily replied, hugging her. I'm proud of you, Mum. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Sam found herself staring at the easel Nate had sent. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood, feeling a longing she'd suppressed for years. Almost without thinking, she dug through her closet until she found a small box stored in the very back. Inside were a few brushes and tubes of paint, old and probably dried up, but still there. She'd never been able to bring herself to throw them away. With trembling hands, she set up the easel and placed a blank canvas on it, one of several that had arrived with the easel. Then, tentatively, she picked up a brush. The feeling was both foreign and achingly familiar, like greeting an old friend after a lifetime apart. She dipped the brush in paint and made a single stroke across the canvas. And just like that, a piece of her soul that had been dormant for decades awakened. Across town, in his penthouse office, Nate was looking at surveillance footage from the McDonald's where he'd reconnected with Sam. His security team had compiled it as part of their standard protocol whenever he made public appearances. He paused. The video on a frame showing Rick Davis watching them from a corner booth, a detail he'd missed in the moment, but was now glaringly obvious. How long was he there? Nate asked his head of security, a former FBI agent named Walsh. Arrived about 10 minutes after you did. Left right after you, sir. Nate frowned. And you're sure it's him? Facial recognition confirms it with 98% certainty. Richard Davis, age 43. 3 DUIs, 2 domestic disturbance calls, currently works as a car salesman at Big Al's Auto Mart. Divorced from Samantha Carter in 2008. Why would he be watching Sam after all these years? Unknown, sir. But there's more. Walsh handed Nate a tablet. He's been making some interesting calls recently. One to a journalist at the National Insider who specializes in celebrity exposés. Another to your ex-wife. Nate's expression darkened. Vanessa, what the hell does she have to do with this? They met for lunch yesterday at the plaza. Our operative couldn't get close enough to hear the conversation, but Davis seemed animated. Nate pinched the bridge of his nose. Keep monitoring him and increase security at the Foundation and Ms. Carter's apartment building, discreetly. After Walsh left, Nate stared out at the city lights. The reappearance of Rick Davis complicated things. Whatever the man was planning, it couldn't be good, especially if Vanessa was involved. His ex-wife had walked away from their divorce with millions, but she'd always wanted more, and she'd never forgiven him for the prenup that had limited her settlement. Nate's phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Thank you for the clothes, but it was too much. He smiled despite his worries, typing back, Nothing's too much for my new foundation director. Consider it an investment in the company's image. Still, I feel like Cinderella, she replied. Just don't leave a shoe behind at the gala, he texted back. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur for Sam. She gave her notice at McDonald's, much to the shock of her manager, and began the process of transitioning to her new role. The salary Nate had offered was more than triple what she'd been making, enough to finally give Lily the support she needed for school and maybe even pay off some of their debt. The night of the gala arrived with a mix of excitement and terror for Sam. Lily helped her with her hair and makeup using tutorials they found online. You look amazing, Mom, Lily said as Sam slipped into the blue gown. Like a movie star. I feel like an imposter, Sam admitted, adjusting the unfamiliar weight of diamond earrings, on loan from the jeweler, another of Nate's arrangements. You're not, Lily assured her. You belong there as much as anyone. A knock at the door signaled the arrival of Nate's driver. With a final hug from Lily, Sam headed out, trying to calm her nerves. The gala was being held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a venue that normally took years to secure but apparently not for Nathaniel Sinclair. As the car pulled up to the entrance, Sam saw celebrities, business leaders, and society figures walking the red carpet. Camera flashes lit up the night, and for a moment she considered telling the driver to take her back home. But then the car door opened, and Nate was there, handsome in a black tuxedo, offering his hand. You came, he said, looking genuinely relieved. Did you think I wouldn't? Sam asked, accepting his hand and stepping out. I know how intimidating all this can be, he replied quietly, so only she could hear. But you don't have to worry. "You're the most beautiful woman here." The compliment sent warmth rushing to Sam's cheeks. "Flattery will get you nowhere, Sinclair." "It got me you as my foundation director," he countered with a grin. As they walked inside, past the photographers and reporters calling Nate's name, Sam felt the eyes of the crowd on them. Whispers followed in their wake. "Who is she? Is that Nathaniel Sinclair's new girlfriend? What happened to the model he was seeing?" Nate kept his hand at the small of her back, a gentle pressure that was both reassuring and distracting. The Great Hall had been transformed for the event, with elegant lighting and displays showcasing artwork from the communities the foundation would serve. "There are some people I'd like you to meet," Nate said, guiding Sam toward a group of well-dressed individuals. The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions. Board members, potential donors, artists, educators, all curious about the woman Nathaniel Sinclair had chosen to run his passion project. To her surprise, Sam found herself handling the conversations with ease. Her genuine passion for art education resonated with the donors, and her practical knowledge impressed the educators. Nate stood beside her, occasionally adding a comment, but mostly letting her take the lead. "You're a natural," he whispered, during a brief moment alone between introductions. "I'm terrified," she confessed. "Could have fooled me," he replied. "You've already charmed half the room." As the evening progressed, Sam began to relax, even enjoying herself. The live orchestra played softly in the background, and the champagne, which she decided she did like after all, helped calm her nerves. When Nate was pulled away to speak with the mayor, Sam took the opportunity to admire the museum's collection. She wandered into a less crowded gallery where a painting caught her eye, a vibrant landscape that reminded her of her own early work. "Beautiful, isn't it?" came a smooth feminine voice from behind her. Sam turned to see a stunning woman in her late 30s, dressed in a sleek red gown that emphasized her model thin figure. "Yes, it is," Sam agreed. "I don't believe we've met," the woman said, extending a manicured hand. "Vanessa Sinclair." Sam felt her stomach drop. "Sinclair? As in—" "Nate's ex-wife," Vanessa confirmed with a predatory smile. "And you must be Samantha Carter, the mysterious woman from his past who's suddenly running his new foundation. How interesting. I didn't realize Nate's ex-wife would be here tonight," Sam said carefully. "Oh, I wouldn't miss it," Vanessa replied, sipping her champagne. "I make it a point to keep tabs on all of Nate's projects." The way she emphasized the word made it clear what category she thought Sam fell into. "The foundation is hardly a project," Sam said, keeping her voice level. "It's going to change lives." Vanessa laughed, a musical sound with no warmth behind. "To how naive. Everything is a project to Nate, including the people in his life." She leaned closer. "You think you're special, that he came back for you because of some long-lost love?" "I don't think anything," Sam replied, though the words stung. "I'm just here to do a job." "Of course you are," Vanessa said with mock sympathy. "Tell me, does he still have that little scar on his lower back, the one from when he fell out of a tree as a child?" Sam's eyes widened slightly. She knew the scar Vanessa was referring to, but it wasn't from falling out of a tree. It was from a bike accident when they were 12, racing through the woods behind her house. Before she could respond, Vanessa continued. "And has he shown you his collection yet? The one he keeps in the private gallery at his penthouse. He's very particular about who sees it." "Vanessa," came Nate's voice, sharp and cold. "I wasn't aware you were on the guest list." He appeared at Sam's side, his body tense. "Darling, you know I support all your charitable endeavors," Vanessa replied, smoothly. "I was just getting acquainted with your new employee." The tension between them crackled in the air. Sam felt like she'd stumbled into a private war zone. "If you'll excuse us," Nate said, taking Sam's elbow gently. "We're needed for the presentation." As he led her away, Sam could feel Vanessa's eyes boring into her back. "I'm sorry about that," Nate said quietly. "Vanessa can be difficult." "She seems to know you well," Sam commented, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Nate glanced at her. "We were married for just over a year. It was a mistake from the beginning, one I've been paying for ever since." Before Sam could ask more, they reached the stage where the formal presentation about the foundation was to take place. Nate stepped up to the microphone, transforming instantly into the charismatic business leader the world knew. As he spoke about the Foundation's mission, Sam watched him from the side of the stage, trying to reconcile the different versions of Nate she was seeing: the boy she'd loved, the billionaire who commanded the room, and the man Vanessa had described. When Nate introduced her as the Foundation's director, the applause was polite but curious. Sam walked to the microphone, suddenly aware of hundreds of eyes on her. "Thank you," she began, her voice shakier than she'd intended. Then she saw Nate watching her, belief in his eyes, and found her strength. "Art saved me once," she continued, her voice steadying. "As a child in a small town with few opportunities, it gave me a way to see beyond my circumstances, to imagine something more. The Sinclair Foundation aims to provide that same opportunity to children who, like me, need a window to a bigger world." As she spoke from the heart about the transformative power of art education, the room grew quieter, more attentive. By the time she finished, the applause was genuine and enthusiastic. "That was incredible," Nate whispered as they left the stage. "You won them over completely." The rest of the gala passed in a blur of congratulations and pledges of support. By the end of the night, the Foundation had secured commitments for twice the funding they'd hoped for. As the crowd began to thin, Nate found Sam by one of the displays featuring children's artwork. "Ready to go?" "I thought we might have a nightcap to celebrate." Sam hesitated. "Actually, I should probably head home. It's been a long day." Disappointment flickered across Nate's face, but he nodded. "Of course. I'll have Jim drive you." "That's not necessary," Sam started to say, but Nate insisted. They walked too, his car in companionable silence. Just as Sam was about to get in, a voice called out from the darkness. "Well, well, well, Sammy and Natey together again. Ain't that sweet?" Sam froze at the all-too-familiar voice. From the shadows emerged Rick Davis, looking disheveled and smelling of alcohol. "Rick," she said, her voice tight, "what are you doing here?" "Can't a guy congratulate his ex-wife on her fancy new job?" Rick slurred, his eyes moving between Sam and Nate. "Or should I say, on landing her rich old boyfriend?" Nate stepped forward, protectively. "You need to leave, Davis." Rick laughed. "Or what, rich boy? You gonna call security on me? Go ahead. But then I might have to share some interesting information with those reporters over there." Sam felt her heart rate accelerate. "What are you talking about?" Rick's gaze fixed on her, malice in his eyes. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Sammy. Or should we ask little Lily? I bet she'd love to know the truth about her daddy." The blood drained from Sam's face. Beside her, she felt Nate go very still. "Get in the car, Sam," Nate said quietly. "Smart man," Rick sneered. "We should talk privately about this. My silence doesn't come cheap, but I'm sure that's not a problem. For you, Sinclair." Sam felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. The secret she'd kept for over 20 years was teetering on the edge of exposure. "We have nothing to talk about," Nate said firmly. "Leave now, or I will have you removed." "Your choice." Rick shrugged, pulling out his phone. "I wonder how much the tabloids would pay for this story. Billionaire's secret love child revealed. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" Sam gasped. Nate's hand tightened on her arm. "If you print a word of your lies," Nate warned, "I'll bury you in lawsuits." "Lies?" Rick laughed. "Why don't you ask Sammy here about the timing, about why she married me so quick after you left, about why Lily looks so much like you?" Sam felt the world spinning around her. This couldn't be happening. Not here, not now. "Get in the car, Sam," Nate repeated, his voice gentle but firm. To Rick, he added, "We'll discuss this another time, when you're sober." As Nate guided her into the car, Sam caught a glimpse of Rick's triumphant smile. He thought he had them cornered, and maybe he did. The car pulled away from the curb, leaving Rick standing in the glow of the museum lights. Inside, silence stretched between Sam and Nate like a chasm. Finally, Nate spoke. "Is it true?" Sam couldn't look at him. "Nate, is it true?" Each word was measured, controlled. Sam closed her eyes, the weight of 21 years of secrets crushing down on her. "Yes," she whispered. "Lily is your daughter." The silence in Nate's car was deafening. Sam stared out the window, unable to look at him after her confession. The lights of the city blurred through her tears. 21 years, Nate finally said, his voice unnaturally calm. You kept my daughter from me for 21 years. Sam wiped away a tear. I didn't know how to tell you. You were gone, building your empire. You could have picked up a phone, Sam. The calm shattered as Nate's voice rose. You could have written a letter. Hell, you could have shown up at my dorm room. I tried. Sam turned to face him, years of pent-up emotion breaking free. When I found out I was pregnant, I called your dorm. Your roommate said you were out with some girl named Clarissa. I left messages you never returned. Nate's brow furrowed. I never got any messages about you calling. Just like I never got your letters, Sam said bitterly. Seems like the universe was determined to keep us apart. Nate ran a hand through his hair. So you married Rick instead? A man you didn't even love? I was 19, pregnant, and alone. My father was dying. My mother was drowning in medical bills, and the one person I thought would always be there for me was gone. Sam's voice broke. Rick offered a solution, a name for my baby. Stability, or so I thought. And you never told Lily the truth. Sam shook her head. Rick was her father on paper. By the time we divorced, it seemed kinder to let her believe that. He wasn't much of a dad, but he was the only one she knew. The car stopped at a red light, and Nate stared straight ahead, his profile rigid. Does she look like me? Despite everything, Sam smiled slightly. So much. She has your eyes, your smile. Your stubborn determination. All these years, Nate whispered more to himself than to Sam. I could have been there for her, for both of you. You had your own life, Nate. Your success, your marriage. A life that would have been completely different if I'd known. He turned to her, pain etched on his face. I had a right to know, Sam. Yes, she admitted. You did. I was wrong to keep it from you. As the car continued toward Sam's apartment, Nate asked, What are we going to do about Rick? I don't know, Sam sighed. He's always been jealous of you, even before he knew about Lily. Now he thinks he's found a way to cash in. Let me handle Rick, Nate said firmly. But Lily, she needs to know the truth before someone else tells her. The thought made Sam's stomach clench. She'll hate me for lying to her all these years. Maybe at first, Nate conceded. But she's an adult, and from what you've told me, she's smart and kind. She'll understand eventually. When they reached Sam's building, Nate surprised her by getting out of the car with her. I want to meet her properly, he explained. If she's there. Sam hesitated, then nodded. This moment had been inevitable from the second she'd recognized Nate at McDonald's. Perhaps it had been inevitable for 21 years. They rode the elevator in silence. Outside her apartment door, Sam paused. Nate, I'm sorry. For everything. He looked at her, his expression softening slightly. I know. We both made mistakes. Inside, Lily was curled up on the couch watching a movie, still dressed up to help her mother prepare for the gala. She jumped up when they entered. Mom, how was... She stopped short when she saw Nate. Mr. Sinclair, I didn't know you were coming. She smoothed her hair self-consciously. Lily, Sam said, her voice shaking slightly. We need to talk to you about something important. Lily looked between them, her intuition picking up the tension immediately. What's wrong? Did something happen at the gala? Sam gestured to the couch. Please sit down. As they all sat, Lily and Sam on the couch, Nate in the armchair across from them, Sam took a deep breath. Lily, there's something I should have told you a long time ago. About your father. Lily's expression grew guarded. What about him? Did he do something? Is he in trouble again? No, it's not that. Sam reached for her daughter's hand. Rick. He's not your biological father. Lily stared at her mother, then looked at Nate, realization dawning in her eyes. Oh my God, she whispered. It's you, isn't it? Nate nodded, his eyes never leaving Lily's face, a face he now saw clearly held echoes of his own. How? Lily asked, pulling her hand away from Sam's. How is this possible? Why didn't you tell me? It's complicated, sweetheart, Sam began. No, Lily cut her off. Don't sweetheart me. You've been lying to me my entire life. She stood up, pacing the small living room. Does Rick know? Of course he does. That's why he always looked at me like I was a burden, like I wasn't really his. Lily, please, Sam pleaded. I was trying to protect you. From what? From knowing that my real father is successful and brilliant instead of a deadbeat who forgets my birthday? From the truth that I didn't know how to tell, Sam admitted. That I made mistakes when I was young and scared. Lily stopped pacing and looked directly at Nate. Did you know about me? No, Nate answered honestly. Not until tonight. If I had known, he would have been there for you, Sam finished quietly. That's the kind of man he is. Lily's eyes filled with tears. So my whole life has been a lie. Not a lie, Nate said gently, standing up. Just an incomplete truth. The part that matters most is still true. Your mother loves you more than anything in this world. She's sacrificed everything for you. Lily looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the features they shared. And you? What am I to you? Some obligation from the past? Nate shook his head. You're my daughter, a miracle I didn't know existed until today. He hesitated, then added, I'd like the chance to know you if you'll let me. The sincerity in his voice seemed to reach Lily. She wiped away a tear, then asked, Were you two in love back then? Sam and Nate exchanged a look loaded with history. Yes, Sam said softly. We were each other's first love. I never stopped loving your mother, Nate admitted, causing Sam's head to snap up in surprise. Even when I thought she'd forgotten me and moved on, Lily absorbed this information, her analytical mind working through the implications. So if you had known about me, everything would have been different, Nate said, for all of us. A knock at the door interrupted the emotional moment. Sam went to answer it, assuming it was a neighbor. Instead, she found Rick standing there, looking more sober than earlier, but no less malevolent. Family reunion, how sweet, he sneered, pushing past Sam into the apartment. Don't mind me, just came to discuss terms with the billionaire. Get out, Sam demanded. Not until I get what's mine, Rick replied, eyeing Nate. 20 years of raising your kid deserves some compensation, don't you think? Lily stepped forward, shock on her face. You knew? All this time you knew I wasn't your daughter? Rick's expression faltered slightly at the sight of Lily. Now, Lily Pad, it's not like that. I still thought of you as, don't lie to me, Lily cut him off. Not anymore, did you know? Rick sighed, dropping the pretense. Yeah, I knew. Your mom was already pregnant when we got together. I figured it was no big deal. Nate was gone. And I wanted your mom. The package deal was fine with me. Until now, Nate said coldly. Now that you think you can get something out of it. Well, why shouldn't I, Rick demanded. I put food on the table, kept a roof over their heads. When you weren't gambling away the rent money or disappearing for weeks at a time, Sam reminded him. Rick waved a dismissive hand. Details. The point is, I played daddy while you were building your empire, Sinclair. That's got to be worth something. Nate stepped forward, his face hardening. You're right, Davis. It is worth something. Sam and Lily both looked at Nate in surprise. Nate, don't, Sam began. Let me finish, Nate said, his eyes never leaving Rick. It's worth exactly what you already received, the privilege of being in Lily's life, of seeing her grow up. That's something I can never buy, no matter how much money I have. Rick snorted. Pretty words, but I was thinking more along the lines of cash. Say, 10 million. Small change for you. You misunderstand me, Nate continued, his voice dangerously quiet. You won't be getting a penny. What you will get if you pursue this is the full attention of my legal team. They'll investigate every aspect of your life, your gambling debts, your drinking problems, those insurance scams you ran at the car dealership. Rick's face paled. How did you... I have resources you can't imagine, Nate said. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out that door and you're going to forget about this blackmail attempt. You're going to sign whatever papers my lawyers draw up, relinquishing any claim to being Lily's father. And in return, I won't destroy what's left of your pathetic life. The room was silent as Rick absorbed the threat. For a moment it seemed like he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped. "Always knew you were too good for me, Sammy," he muttered. To Lily he added, "For what it's worth, I did love you, kid. In my own way." With that, he turned and left, closing the door softly behind him. "Will he be back?" Lily asked, her voice small. "No," Nate assured her. "But if he causes any more problems, I'll handle it." Lily nodded, then excused herself, saying she needed time to process everything. She retreated to her bedroom, leaving Sam and Nate alone. "Thank you," Sam said quietly, "for not giving in to his blackmail." "I'd never let him hurt you or Lily," Nate replied. He paused, then added, "There's something else we need to talk about. The job." Sam's heart sank. "I understand if you want to rescind the offer. It's too complicated now." "That's not what I was going to say," Nate clarified. "The job is still yours if you want it. You're the best person for it, regardless of our personal history. But if you take it, I want to be clear that there are no strings attached. No expectations beyond your professional duties." "I appreciate that," Sam said, relief evident in her voice. "I still want the job. I need it, actually." Nate nodded. "Good. Then we'll keep the personal and professional separate." He moved toward the door. "I should go. It's been an overwhelming night for everyone." As he reached for the doorknob, Sam called out, "Did you mean what you said? About never stopping loving me?" Nate turned back, his face vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen since they were teenagers. "Every word. Even after everything I kept from you." "I'm angry about that, Sam. I probably will be for a while," he admitted. "But feelings don't just disappear because you want them to. Believe me, I've tried." Sam took a step toward him. "I've never stopped loving you either. I just didn't know if there was any way back from all the mistakes we both made." "Maybe there isn't," Nate said softly. "Or maybe we need to find a new way forward instead of trying to go back." "A new way forward," Sam repeated, testing the words. "I'd like that." Nate smiled, a hint of their old warmth returning. "Get some rest, Sam. Lily's going to need you in the morning. We can talk more later." With that, he left, closing the door gently behind him. Sam stood in the quiet apartment, feeling as though her life had been completely upended in the span of a few hours. She went to check on Lily, finding her daughter sitting on her bed, looking at old photos. "Can I come in?" Sam asked softly. Lily nodded, making room on the bed. Sam sat beside her, looking at the photo album open on Lily's lap. Pictures from her childhood, many with Sam, few with Rick. "I always wondered why I didn't look like him," Lily said, "but I never imagined this. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Sam said. "I was afraid of disrupting your life, and then as time went on, it got harder and harder to find the right moment." Lily was quiet for a moment, then asked, "What was he like when you were young?" Sam smiled, memories washing over her. "Brilliant, kind, full of dreams and ideas. He was always inventing things, even back then. He built me a music box once, carved the whole thing by hand." "You told me that before," Lily noted. "I thought you meant Rick." Sam shook her head. "It was Nate. He spent weeks working on it in his father's garage. It played our song, this silly pop ballad we both loved." "Do you still have it?" "No," Sam said sadly. "It got lost somewhere along the way, like so many things." Lily flipped to the back of the album, where some loose photos were stored. She pulled out one Sam had forgotten was there, a faded picture of her and Nate at their high school graduation, arms around each other, young and hopeful. "He looks happy here," Lily observed. "You both do." "We were," Sam confirmed. "We thought we had our whole lives ahead of us together." "And now?" Lily asked. "Where do we go from here?" Sam took her daughter's hand. "That's up to you, in many ways. Nate wants to be part of your life, but only if you want that too. And what about you and him?" "That's complicated. We have a lot of history, a lot of hurt to work through." She squeezed Lily's hand. "But right now, you're what matters most to both of us." Lily nodded, processing this. "I think I'd like to get to know him, my real father." She shook her head in disbelief. "I still can't believe my father is Nathaniel." "Sinclair," Sam hugged her daughter close. You're still the same Lily you've always been, that hasn't changed. But everything else has, Lily said. My whole life just shifted. I know, sweetheart, and I'm here for you through all of it. They sat together for a long time, looking through photos and talking. Eventually, Lily fell asleep, emotionally exhausted. Sam covered her with a blanket and quietly left the room. In her own bedroom, Sam couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the night's events, the gala, Rick's appearance, the revelation, Nate's confession that he still loved her. It was too much to process. On impulse, she went to the living room and set up the easel. Painting had always been how she processed her emotions as a young woman. Perhaps it could help now. As the sun began to rise, Sam was still painting, a landscape of the place where she and Nate had spent their summers as teenagers, the old oak tree by the river where they'd carved their initials and dreamed of the future. 3 weeks later, the Sinclair Foundation was officially open for business. Despite the personal complications, Sam had thrown herself into her new role with passion and dedication. Nate had kept his word about maintaining professional boundaries at work, though they'd had several private conversations about Lily. To her surprise, Lily and Nate had formed a cautious but growing relationship. They'd discovered shared interests in technology and art, and Nate had offered to help fund the rest of Lily's education, an offer she had reluctantly accepted after much encouragement from Sam. Today was the Foundation's first community event, an art workshop for local children. Sam had spent the morning organizing supplies and preparing the classrooms, her heart full as she watched excited kids file in. "Ms. Carter," Zoe called from the doorway. "There's a delivery for you in your office." Curious, Sam headed upstairs. On her desk sat a beautifully wrapped package. No card, but she knew immediately who it was from. Her hands trembled slightly as she unwrapped it. Inside was a handcrafted wooden music box, almost identical to the one Nate had made her all those years ago. When she opened it, the familiar melody of their song began to play. Tucked inside was a note in Nate's handwriting. "Some things can be rebuilt if we're willing to try. Dinner tonight, just the two of us." Sam traced her fingers over the intricate carving on the lid, a perfect replica of their initials in the old oak tree. "He had it remade," came Lily's voice from the doorway. Sam looked up in surprise. "Lily, what are you doing here?" "He asked for my help," Lily explained, entering the office. "He found an old photo of the original and hired a master woodworker to recreate it. The song part was trickier. He had to hum it for the music box maker to get the tune right." "You helped him with this?" Sam asked, touched by the collaboration between her daughter and her. What was Nate to her now? Lily nodded. "He's been trying to figure out how to show you he's serious about moving forward. Not just about me, but about you too. And how do you feel about that?" Sam asked carefully. Lily sat on the edge of the desk. "Honestly, it's still weird, all of it. But I see the way he looks at you, Mum, and the way you look at him when you think no one's watching." Sam felt her cheeks warm. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who knows you as well as I do," Lily replied with a smile. "Look, I can't pretend to understand everything that happened between you two, but I know second chances don't come along often. Maybe you shouldn't waste this one." Sam hugged her daughter tightly. "When did you get so wise?" "Must be those Sinclair genes," Lily joked, pulling away. "So, are you going to dinner with him?" Sam looked at the music box, playing the song that had once been the soundtrack to her first love. "Yes," she decided. "I think I am." That evening, Nate picked her up from the Foundation building as the last of the children's workshop was winding down. He looked slightly nervous, reminding Sam of the boy who had asked her to the junior prom all those years ago. "The music box is beautiful," she told him as they walked to his car. "I can't believe you remembered every detail." "Some things you never forget," he replied, "no matter how much time passes." Instead of taking her to an expensive restaurant, as she expected, Nate drove them to a small community park near her apartment. "What are we doing here?" Sam asked, confused. Nate smiled mysteriously as he led her to a secluded spot by a small pond. There, set up under a tree, was a picnic blanket with a basket and 2 glasses. "I thought we could use some privacy," he explained. "Away from photographers and ex-spouses and all the complications of our lives." Sam smiled as she sat down on the blanket. "This is nice. Reminds me of our picnics by the river back home." "That was the idea," Nate said, opening the basket to reveal simple sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of wine. "Nothing fancy tonight, just us." As they ate and talked, the years seemed to melt away. They shared stories of the time they'd missed in each other's lives, laughed about old memories, and gradually began to feel comfortable together again. "I want to show you something," Sam said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small canvas, the painting she'd done the night of the revelation. Nate took it carefully, his eyes widening as he recognized the scene. "The oak tree," he murmured. "You remembered it perfectly." "I never forgot," Sam said softly. "Not any of it." Nate set the painting aside gently, then took her hands in his. "Sam, these past weeks have been complicated. Discovering I have a daughter, working with you at the foundation, trying to figure out where we go from here." "I know," she agreed. "It's a lot to navigate. But one thing has become absolutely clear to me," Nate continued. "I don't want to spend another 20 years without you in my life." Sam's heart raced. "What are you saying exactly?" "I'm saying I want us to try again. Not to go back to who we were, we're different people now, but to see who we might become together." He squeezed her hands. "I've never stopped loving you, Sam. Not really. Even when I didn't have you, I had the memory of you, and it shaped everything I did." Tears welled in Sam's eyes. "I've spent so many years convinced that dreams don't come true, that practical choices are the only safe ones. And now?" Nate cast hope in his voice. "Now I'm starting to believe again," she admitted, "in art, in second chances, in us." Nate leaned forward, his hand gently touching her cheek. "May I?" Sam nodded, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that was both familiar and new, a reunion and a beginning all at once. When they pulled apart, Nate rested, his forehead against hers. "We have a lot to figure out." "We do," she agreed. "Lily, the foundation, where we'll live, how we'll blend our very different lives. But we'll figure it out together," Nate promised. "No more secrets, no more misunderstandings. Just truth and trust from now on." Sam smiled, feeling truly happy for the first time in years. "Truth and trust," she echoed. "I like the sound of that." They stayed in the park until twilight, making plans and dreaming dreams, just as they had as teenagers. But this time, their dreams were tempered by experience, their hopes grounded in the reality of who they had become. As darkness fell, Sam looked up at the emerging stars. "Do you remember what you said to me the night before you left for MIT? Under the stars, just like these?" Nate smiled, the memory clear in his mind. "I said that no matter where life took us, we'd find our way back to each other. That some loves are written in the stars." "I didn't believe you then," Sam admitted. "Not really, it seemed too much like a fairy tale." "And now?" Nate asked, pulling her close. Sam looked at the man who had been her first love and who, against all odds, had returned to be her last love as well. "Now I think maybe some fairy tales do come true," she said, "if you're brave enough to believe in them." 6 months later, the Sinclair Foundation Gallery hosted its first major exhibition. The centerpiece was a series of paintings by a promising new artist, Samantha Carter Sinclair. The collection, titled The Road Home, told the story of love, lost and found again across the years. At the opening, Nate stood proudly beside his wife, their daughter Lily between them, a family united by truth at last. As guests admired Sam's work, Nate whispered in her ear, "I always told you you'd be a famous artist someday." Sam smiled, leaning into his embrace. Better late than never. In the center of the gallery hung the painting that had started it all, the oak tree by the river, with 2 sets of initials carved into its trunk and now a third set beside them. NS, SC, and LS, connected by the branches that reached toward the endless sky above. A family tree, rooted in the past but growing toward the future. A love that time forgot, but destiny remembered. The end.